Hello there, I'm Karen Antara. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And this is my intuitive energy reading for April 2026. Big deep breath. Now, I'm pretty sure that we've all seen the movie The Hunger Games, right? And I would guess that you're also aware of Agenda 2030. If you're not, please look it up. So if you're aware of those things, I guess we can all see what they are trying to lead us into. And when I say they, I do mean the dark agenda, the dark forces, whatever you want to call that. Anyway, it's possible that they could actually lead us there and create a situation like the one we saw in the Hunger Games. But it's also possible that we could choose and create otherwise, create something different. And of course, the invitation is for us to think for ourselves and create the reality that we want to experience, and really to get a much better outcome than the Hunger Games. Really to create something like the new earth paradigm that we all talk about in spiritual circles and beyond nowadays as well. The thing is, to create that new earth paradigm, it really requires the collective. Obviously not something that one of us can do on our own. And so when we talk about the collective, that actually means all of us, many of us, coming together in unity, community, right? Not being separate and against each other. United we stand, divided we fall. And you can see that much of their agenda is about dividing us. Opposing this group against that group and making that one the bad one and picking on that one and all of the rubbish that we've seen. We have an opportunity here to create a global shift of consciousness. In fact, that is happening whether we want it or not, whether we are on board with it or not. In fact, just look at how many people have woken up in recent years, and especially since 2020. Woken up to some degree, let's just say, because it's interesting to see the levels of awakeness. Because actually, this waking up, as we call it, it does happen in layers over a period of time. It's not instant. And we can see that some people are awake to certain things, completely asleep to other things. That's a bit of a problem. Anyway, April, it's going to be a big one. It's already started. Here in Australia, yesterday, on April Fool's Day, 1st of April, our Prime Minister made some big announcement. I mean, to be honest, on social media now, so many people are saying that that was an April Fool's joke. But sadly, we know it's not. I do absolutely think that he chose to do it on April Fool's Day to kind of shove in our faces that they are mocking us, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, that's my view. What we do know, if we are awake and aware enough to see it, is that he was conditioning the population and getting them ready for further announcements and lockdowns in regards to fuel shortages and the knock-on effects of that. They are experts at psychological manipulation of the population. We know that, even if we didn't know that before COVID, surely we know it now. What we are going through is a deliberate psychological operation. Actually, it's psychological warfare, right? And it is designed once again, just like 2020, to try to break our spirit and drop us into a lower frequency where we become helpless and hopeless and thereby easily controlled. Looking at those frequency layers, I'm referring to David Hawkins' scale of consciousness. Have a look at that if you don't already know of it. Helpless and hopeless, very low frequency to hold in our consciousness and in our body. So I'm sad to say that what they're trying to do is, it's a mind game. That is exactly what they're trying to do, lower our frequency. Now, some people suffered horribly through COVID. Many were traumatized, and many people still are, actually. And with that memory still fresh in mind, really, all these dark forces, but politicians in this example that I'm using, all they have to do is threaten another lockdown. And our mind, not everybody, but some people, our mind will go right back there into a state of panic and fear and sadness and fight and flight and grief, and all of the trauma that they experienced through COVID can be reactivated in their mind very, very quickly. And all of that drops their frequency and level of consciousness. Why are they doing that, do you think? Well, we are in an ascension cycle. I believe we are anyway. And we are at a time of mass awakening, or the potential for mass awakening, let me say. And the potential for a global shift of consciousness into a higher frequency state of being, which ultimately can lead us to emancipation, freedom, sovereignty, liberation. And so if their agenda is to control and enslave humanity, which I believe it is, well, then no wonder they have to keep us in a state where they keep trying to lower our frequency constantly. If they can lower our frequency into a helpless and hopeless state, then we're never going to wake up and take our power to create a better world, are we? And that's aside from the fact that when everybody is in fear and panic, they lose that energy for themselves, these other dimensional creatures that they are. So, really, despite this lockdown looking very physical via this manipulated fuel shortage, what is really happening is actually a lockdown of your mind in an attempt to, switch off any connection that you have to your layers of consciousness to the divine. So what can we do? Well, if we truly believe that we create our own reality with our consciousness, you must pay attention to your thoughts. Seriously, how many people have already dropped into that feeling of fear and dread? It's contagious. Everywhere you go, people are talking about it, buying toilet roll. You really want to shake off that energy immediately. It's not a good energy to have around you. So don't hang around with people that are in doom and gloom over what they fear will happen. Because if you hang around with people in that low frequency, it's going to pull you down. And this isn't just about lockdown either. This is about anything, really. People's financial problems, people's health situations, people's relationships, people's shitty life, like anything. We don't want to be hanging around with heavy people. We certainly don't want to be rescuing them. there is that expression, when you fly in a plane and the oxygen mask comes down, put your own one on first, right? And, don't jump in a river to rescue somebody. Put out a stick and pull them out from the side. So basically, we don't want to be dropping down into the doom and gloom energy where so many people already are. And let's be honest, how many people are already thinking about these lockdowns? Sure, I'm talking about it, but I just want to use that for an example, right? The thing is, they're already thinking about what they will and won't be able to do. I've even heard that airlines are writing to customers that have purchased tickets for a few months' time and saying, if you want a refund, you can have it now. I mean, they're not saying that they won't be flying, but the insinuation is there, and people have imaginations and they can put pieces together, right? So the point is, as people think about what they will and won't be able to do in this lockdown, they're already expecting it. They're already planning for it. When you create with your consciousness, you get what you expect to get. So if you are expecting a lockdown and hardship, what are you driving yourself towards with your consciousness? So be really careful with your thoughts, because your thoughts create your reality. So now imagine if everybody were to focus their thoughts on a quick and easy resolution. And imagine if we actually created that outcome instead. Because this is a fake crisis. Lies and manipulation cannot hold in a higher field of consciousness. It just can't exist. It's a little bit like a block of ice can't stay as ice when you put it in the hot sun. It melts. It cannot hold itself together in that form with the heat upon it. And this is the same with lies and manipulation. They cannot hold together in that higher state of consciousness. So could you imagine if everybody raised their consciousness and we created a field of higher frequency that we all live in within? Well, then everybody would be able to see right through the lies and the manipulation, because it's not real. All of their story about these crises, the 2021 and this one that they're trying to create, it's all lies and fabrication. And the thing is, they know as well that when we buy into it, when we put our consciousness into it, we create it. Because that's how things are created in this matrix reality, or this simulation, if you like. And so, if you believe what they tell you, you are already on track to living and creating and experiencing that. So, as I said, this lockdown really is it's not about this manipulated fuel shortage at all. What this is a lockdown, or an attempt to lock down your mind. Once your mind is locked down, your connection with your spirit is blocked, or the divine, or the universe, or God, whatever you want to call that. But once your mind is locked down into their reality, low frequency, you also block anything higher. Your intuition, your inner divine, your knowing, your connection with God, as I say. And along with that is you are locked out, in a sense, of the ability to think for yourself, or it's severely hampered anyway. And as we're talking about a shift into a higher state of consciousness here, that is severely hampered too. You could think of it kind of like a bridge in a sense, right? So here we are in 3D. Everybody wants to move into New Earth or 5D or multidimensional, whatever you want to call that part. Imagine that there's like a bridge between the two and we move up to it. When your mind is locked down, that bridge is taken away. How do you jump between the two? This is why you have to keep your mind open and into that state of consciousness expansion. Enter spiritual bypassing, because I know that people will when I mention this, because there are those who think they've done all the work and that they are evolved and that they're fine. But based upon past experiences from 2020, we can see that the moment that's challenged, they drop down their frequency. They drop down into fear and panic, and they follow orders. People will always do what they can to easily move away from pain, as opposed to moving towards the freedom that they say they want. Because, you know, that might actually involve standing up against a corrupt system that is trying to control you. That's what we saw in COVID, didn't we? And that's why their plan worked, by the way, because so many people caved in and just went along with whatever they were asked to do because it meant a quiet life. But I'm questioning, is that holding to your spiritual principles of freedom and sovereignty? If your mind is locked down and you're following orders that inherently are of a low frequency, and yet you're trying to say I'm spiritually evolved, like how do the two work together? I don't know. But it looks a bit sus to me. So many people don't understand, I think, how the mind actually works. They think they create their own thoughts and make their own choices freely. But until they start doing some of their inner work to really know and understand themselves, they are thinking thoughts and making choices from their conditioning, much of which is social conditioning, which is why people go along and follow orders. And much of that is also childhood conditioning, what we experienced back there, kind of how we were programmed back then. You know, be the good girl, do as I say. And also people are programmed or conditioned by trauma, the trauma that they've experienced. So let's talk about how we can change this. Because to be perfectly honest, many of the people that I see, you know, doing the spiritual bypassing, they actually haven't done the inner work. So in a sense, they're still very conditioned and may choose to follow the crowd and follow orders, let's say. So when we use our thoughts, our consciousness, it is completely possible that we experience a different reality, even though the person next to us is experiencing, you know, something else. Because it's about your consciousness and it's about your frequency and it's about your perception. So really what they're trying to do is control our perception of reality. And really this is very, determined by what you choose to focus on. We create our reality with our thoughts and our consciousness. So what are you focusing on creating? Old systems have to break down. We can't create the new with the old stuff still in place. So, we can expect a period of turbulence. That's for sure. And this change could be done smoothly. It just requires people to choose differently. Choosing to not be mind controlled for a start. That would help. So how do we create a change? Well, I'm going to use plastic water bottles as an example in this. It's so easy to go to the corner store, and pick up a plastic water bottle. But we know they're not good for the environment. We know they leach microplastics very often into the water that we drink. We know it's not good for our body. Imagine then if everybody chose to no longer buy plastic water in plastic bottles. Imagine if everybody said, that's really not good. I can't do that anymore. My conscience won't allow me to do that anymore. Now I'm going to buy the glass bottles. And there are a few brands. I think one of them might be Voss, but I've seen glass water bottles on the shelves. So imagine that everybody says, no, I'm done with plastic. I'm only going to buy water in a glass water bottle. Well, the demand for glass bottles is going to go through the roof, isn't it? Sky high. Everybody wants to drink their water from a glass bottle, not a plastic bottle anymore. The companies that produce the water in plastic bottles, their sales are going to, drop through the floor, which is probably a good thing considering who those big multinational corporations are that create those plastic water bottles. But anyway, the creators of the water in plastic bottles would go out of business. They would either have to close down or they would have to start producing glass bottles to put their water in because of consumer demand. It would be better for everyone, better for the environment, better for our health. And that change is all led by consumer choice because we actually have the power. We get to create with our choices, our consciousness, our spending power, right? The problem is that so many people are lazy. They want the easiest and the cheapest option every time. And I know that some people don't always have a choice. Financially, they have to go with the cheapest option. It's all they can afford. But other people have the money to make better, more conscious choices. They just choose not to. Or they don't have the consciousness to actually be able to work that out. Or maybe they just don't care. But if we want a change, we have to be that change, remember? So let's talk again for a moment about earth changes. I think I have talked about this before in another video. I'm sure I have. But again, I understand that it can be frightening when you see oceans rising up and reclaiming beaches and walkways, etc. But the earth has always changed. Land mass, ocean, climate. It's always changed. This is not new. And actually, oceans are rising in some parts and remaining the same in the other. And I can't quite understand how that works, whether it's a globe or a flat earth. So if you can explain to me why they're going up there, staying the same there, I'd love to hear that. Anyway, that's a side note. People talk about Lemuria, Mu, fifth dimensional Earth, Tara, the lands of Eden, rising again, etc. But the thing is, in those times, the Earth didn't look the same. The landmass, the waters were different. The climate was different. So think about this realistically. Can we expect our 3D Earth to evolve to a fifth dimensional Earth or Tara and still look the same? Can that work? Because this is not man-made climate change that we're talking about here. Although, of course, pollution caused by some of the big companies that make plastic bottles and worse, that's disgusting. It is causing a problem. I'm not disputing that. But remember, we, the Earth, and her people are experiencing a global consciousness and dimensional shift. You cannot go through that and expect everything to look exactly the same, and nor should it. Nor do we want that, surely. But that's the time that we're in right now. And that's the time that you, me, we chose to be here for, to lead as visionaries and guides as we move into this new era. And, you know, if you're interested in this type of material, listening to me and others who talk about this, it's because you are designed to hold a particular frequency to support this shift of consciousness. So the ones who want to stay in control, the dark agenda, let's call it, they are now desperate. They are throwing everything they've got at us to try to hold back this evolution, this expansion of consciousness of the planet and the people. Our job is to stay focused on what we came here to do. Remember what we came here to do. And to hold our consciousness at as high a level as we possibly can. And we are collectively, if it all goes well, moving into a whole new identity. Now, not everybody will be able to do that, and that is their choice. Not everybody will be able to maintain that shift, and they may fall back. It's very hard, actually, to go through an identity shift and hold and stabilize yourself there if you are surrounded with naysayers and doom and gloomers, for example. When you make a shift in your identity, it's just so much easier if you are surrounded by people on the same wavelength, like-minded, right? So some people will make a shift, but you'll see them fall back again through their choices and actions, possibly through a mind lockdown, as I've said. And then the rest of us that can see what's going on, and we are here to guide and support each other through, well, we will just be continuing on, right? Creating the reality that we want, continuing to work on ourselves so that we can hold our consciousness at a high level. And, you know, finding peace within ourselves through being in this world as it goes through its change and transition, but not part of it to the degree that we get sucked into its agenda. But that takes work, you know. It's not just wishful thinking, and spiritual bypassing won't get you there either. You actually have to say, you know, I remember what I came here for. I know I'm meant to be assisting and supporting this shift of consciousness, and I'm committed to do that. So this is something that we must actively engage with now and going forwards. And it can't really be ignored, because once the mind is locked down, it may not be able to be unlocked so easily. So I do feel that, we're getting to, I don't want to say the end of times in that doom and gloom way, because that's not at all how I see it. But, we are kind of at a challenge point where we want to take this next, whether we want to carry on working on ourselves, growing, evolving, expanding, doing the inner work, or whether we just want to go, I'm in fear, I can't do a thing, I'm just going to fall backwards into that lower consciousness and get swept away with that wave. I'm not talking about death here. I'm just talking about choices in levels of consciousness, where you want to be, what you want to experience. And it's always been like that because we've had free will and choice here. But that is the key, right? We do have free will and choice. And if somebody comes along and says, you have to do this, we still have free will and choice, just as when we went through 2020 and beyond. There was choice there. Sure, it wasn't always easy to choose that and hold that and maintain that, but many, many people did. And through that, it's often only when we get really, really pushed into the corner that we actually stand up and say, no, I choose sovereignty. I choose consciousness. And I actually feel that that's where we are once again. I could talk about so many other levels of this in terms of, digital and transhumanism and AI and all these different aspects. But actually, if you want to bring them all together, all of it is about dumbing down our consciousness, keeping us in a low frequency state and controllable. Well, I don't know about you, but that is not my choice. That is not where I will be. And I will continue to work upon myself to grow and expand and support those around me that want to work with me on this. So I hope that something I've said here resonates with you, has given you food for thought. And, I hope that you will make some good and positive choices. So if you would like to reach out to me for any reason, you can put a comment in the box. You can find me on Facebook and Substack, Karen Antara, and my website, karenantara.org. Let's stay in touch, and I'll see you on the other side, as they say. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye for now.